morning. My name is Maria Meyer. I have the honor and the privilege to be a learner here with you today. I get to be here as the executive director of the Women's Fund Miami-Dade. We're all important here today, but we're also a blip on the screen. The Women's Fund for over 3 decades has been changing our community on behalf of women and girls. People like these board members that you see here are creating the vision of a Miami-Dade where power and possibility are not limited by gender, which means let's take the opposite and be positive, full of possibilities, potential, and growth. So on we go. I can't even tell you, we've got quite a few amazing, everybody's amazing. We've got powerful organizations, entities, elected officials, people from elected officials' offices. Many of our community partners, our amazing community partners, are in the house and signed up today. Direct service providers, donors who fuel our mission, whether it's $5 because you want to support this Impact Collaborative today, or big grand mission supporters, brands. We have some banks and some family foundations and folks like that who have great capacity who are in the house today. And I see Carmen and Rawson, who you know, one of our pillar sponsors, who support our economic mobility pillar. Hey, Daddy, why are you still paying women less? All of this amazing village is here to learn from these great experts here today. So we're here for a serious issue today. We also have serious fun for a serious cause. So Libby, otherwise known as Liberty Hernandez, we get our interns for special names like this. Today, Liberty Hernandez, best name ever for this Impact Collaborative. Join us for Raise the Bar, serious networking for a serious cause. Many judges have already signed up to be there with us. Anybody who's interested in freedom from violence, any of the legal services, please come. It's a great party and a networker. And we don't talk as much as we do at Power of the Purse. It's really about being one, being together. So join us on October 19th. You can sign up here, either to sponsor or individual tickets. And on we go. Camila is driving here today. Camila Ustares. Listen to this. In the 2020 Miami-Dade general elections, female voters participated at a higher rate, 3% higher than male voters. I think we're a little bit over 50% of the population, 51% last I looked. And those voters, those female voters, had a higher level of voter registration than males, like 9% higher. Everybody knows I'm pro-people. My dad's my best friend. My brother's my other best friend. But when I'm talking about issues that focus on women and girls and retrofitting our community to serve them fully and well, it is incumbent upon people who focus, like females, on ourselves to start getting it right. We have a natural focus along with our allies. So I invite you to do 3 things today. Incredible, powerful village that is here in the office. Introduce yourselves in the chat. Communicate with one another. Make sure you're connected. And then do 3 things. Please pay close attention to the data. The Women's Fund is now creating caches and treasures of data for you to plug into, just like those stats that we heard today. Then take a moment to take the stories and create your own story and envision what it could look like if you harnessed that female potential of vote. And then third, I invite you to take 5 minutes today, whether it's during this webinar, or this meeting, or during the, or right after. Make your own personal action plan, what you're going to do about it, what you'd like to envision, how you're going to do it with your networks, and or as a part of whatever collective you resonate with. You know, if you're interested in maternal health, who's looking at maternal health and how people support that within our government? If you care about voters' rights, who's supporting that? All of those different things resonate with somebody and go to your own networks. I am going to pre-introduce our keynote speaker, and she's going to introduce herself as we always do in the Impact Collaboratives, but let me give you a little prequel. Vicki Lopez has served as a board member of your Women's Fund Miami-Dade for many years. She is the founding trainer of Advocacy 101 when we started. She's been empowering women and girls to hear their voices louder and how to do it correctly. Vicki, will you please accept our warmest welcome and our gratitude for you taking time out of your busy schedule, and please take it away.
Thank you so much, Maria. I'm so thrilled to be a part of what I think is not only a timely, but incredibly important discussion around women having voices at the voting booth, right? I mean, there's just been so much going on, not only in our local communities, but around our state, that really does require incredible participation on behalf of women. I've been as you all know, a very strong supporter of women and girls. But with respect to this topic, you have to be 18 to vote. So I'm going to focus more on women, if you will, than on our girls. But, I think for all of us who are women, I think we have an incredible responsibility to ensure that not only are our voices heard by participating, by voting, but that we are doing it on behalf of girls that, will one day be in our shoes as well. And I think for me, it's been very important now as a new state representative to address issues that really are important to women and girls. And I think what I would say, sort of kicking off this conversation, is we have to really get informed. We cannot be lazy anymore. And although the statistics show that we voted more than men did in the last election, it isn't enough. And I say that because obviously I'm watching carefully the number of people who vote and how they vote, right? And I think that we have to take advantage of every single option available to us as women, depending on what our circumstances are. And I say that across the spectrum of women, right? So I did a lot of knocking on doors during my campaign. And what I discovered, obviously, was there's a vast majority of different types of women that I had a chance to meet and encourage to get out to vote. And for those of us sort of in the later years of our lives, there are many, many, many women who are either homebound or have transportation as an issue. And so we have to encourage sort of the education piece. So for all of you that are participating in this call today, I will challenge you to get out there and share the information that you will learn here today, but more importantly, to participate in helping to get women to the polls, right? Because transportation is one of those issues that challenges women, especially those that are older and can't get to the polls. Now, as you all know, we live in a very diverse community in Miami-Dade County, and many people actually English is not their first language. So the fact that our ballots are printed in 3 different languages is a plus. However, if you are sight impaired or you're very elderly, if you've ever taken a look at a mail-in ballot, which is what most people will use who cannot get to the polls, the font is very small. And time and time again, I have worried about some of the impediments or challenges to women who want to participate in the process and simply can't. So for me today, I'm hopeful that what everyone will learn from these experts that have been invited, because they truly are experts and they're truly on the ground doing what I consider to be God's work, because it is onerous in many ways. And I'll give you an example, right? So I've always voted by mail because some of us that are very busy or who travel a great deal or who simply have a lot of responsibilities and can't on that specific day get to the polls, voting by mail is really important. Well, I had to request, if you will, my ballot because of the new laws. And so, that's one big challenge I think women are going to face. If they don't know, they must now begin to request a new mail-in ballot for this year's elections. And so I know that some of the experts here will talk a little bit more about the sort of particulars around that. But that's a prime example. If we do not inform ourselves about the different types of options that we have to make sure that our vote is counted and we're able to actually participate in the process, we will be, there are deadlines that need to be met. And there are processes now that need to be enacted as women. And so, and the other thing that I would say, besides the sort of normal process issues, is to be informed about the issues. I can't tell you how many women meet with me and absolutely are ill-informed or misinformed about some of the things that are going on in our communities, whether it's a local race, a state race, or a federal race. And so I can't stress enough that women should be making informed decisions when they go to the ballot. And I think a lot of them, I mean, I can't tell you how many women would come to the precinct where I was standing and say, I'm not even voting on those amendments. At the time we had some city charter amendments, and I'd say, why not? And they'd say, I don't even understand them. And I thought to myself, well, leaving that, because you don't have to vote on every single item on the ballot, but I think we cheat ourselves from the opportunity to be involved in not just voting for candidates, but voting for issues. And I think that that's going to become critically important in this next election. We must know as women what it is that's being placed before us, because if we don't vote and someone else does, then their vote will be the one that we have to live with and not our own. So for me, it's not just understanding what candidates stand for. It's all about what are these issues that I'm being asked to vote on. And there'll be some important ones that will get on the ballot, both statewide and locally. So, every little bit helps. And I'm always telling women, listen, we are the most qualified to do this job that we have, and that is to vote, not only for ourselves, but for our families. Because predominantly I meet with a lot of single mothers, and we always talk about what's important to her and her children. So understanding what is on the ballot that impacts not only us as women, but our families is going to be critically important as we move into this very important election in 2024. So I'm hopeful that everyone who's listening, we need to get the message out, and I'm challenging all of you to do just that, because it isn't enough. You have to encourage women. You have to help women. You have to get them to the polls if they need to get to the polls. And if they can't, then help them request their mail-in ballots, help them to understand that we have early voting and where those sites are. That's another huge challenge for women, because the sites change from election to election. And so I had people coming to a precinct where I was, and quite frankly, they were at the wrong precinct. And that's another thing, informing yourself as to where you're supposed to vote. You have to look at and see where your voter registration card says your precinct's at. You have to make sure that all of your information is up to date so that you are voting at the right precinct. And during those early voting days, and it's 2 weeks in Miami-Dade County, many women thought they were supposed to be going to their precinct instead of to the precincts that were designated for early voting. And you can go to any of them, and no one knew that, right? So they were spending a lot of time in their cars trying to get to the right place. And so we want to try to help avoid those, what I call mini challenges for women, because there are so many. Trust me, when you have children or you have to pick up a child at school and you're working, you are forced to try to figure out how best can you get your voice heard in the voting process without having to make too many challenges for yourself. So I don't want to spend a great deal of time talking about, these things when we have some incredible experts here today who I'm so grateful to serve on this panel with, because they are actually doing the work. I'm your representative for those of you that live in District 113. And, we're going to do everything that we can to ensure that those people that live in District 113 get registered to vote and can get to the polls, no matter what party they are, no matter, and I think that that's an important discussion as well. 40% of my district now does not pertain to any party. And yet we live in a state that has a closed primary. And I think it's important because I had a lot of people that are no party affiliated that had moved into my district that showed up at a precinct during the primaries and couldn't vote. And so they didn't know that, right? And because we have so many new women who have moved to our state, it's our responsibility as those of us who live here and have grown up here to ensure that they understand our closed primary process as well. which is a challenge, I have to say. I'm going to turn it back over to Maria now, because I want to make sure that we have time to hear from the experts on the places in which all of us together can help work to ensure that not only our voices are heard, but the voices of all the women that we know and those that we don't know are heard in this next very important election. So Maria, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of my Women's Fund and everyone else's Women's Fund. It is probably the greatest place for women to get information like this, which traditionally, would not be available to them otherwise. So I really very much appreciate the opportunity to share in this conversation, but also to learn myself on how I can better represent those voters in my district so I can help everyone get to the polls, regardless of how you're voting.
We know you're at Parkland right now, Vicki. Stay with us as long as you can. Thank you for representing in so many different ways. It's incredible that people are here today. So you're United Way, Power of the Heels, Underline, Mujer, J. Crew, YWCA, like all these incredible, we have electeds here. We have people who are running for office. We have public servants. We have incredible board members. And believe me, I'm not doing the list to leave people out. This is an important time for you all to share. Participate, please, in the polls. Keep on sharing in the chat. We come together here, and then you'll gather outside the village of the Women's Fund, and then we'll come back together. We are stronger together when we're connected. Please participate. Please do the survey that you'll get later. As you can tell, your Women's Fund is using data these days. So we're gonna rage on fast and forward to ask each of our three panelists today to do the near impossible. In 2 minutes, introduce yourselves in context of today's incredible topic, women's power at the polls, driven by equality, justice, and change. Monica, please take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Monica Bustinza. I serve as the Democracy Programs Director at Engage Miami. In this role, I oversee Engage Miami's voter engagement efforts, which include voter registration, education, mobilization, and advocacy. I'm also a director in the League of Women Voters of Florida board and a researcher. I research various topics, including election administration, discretion, and violence against women in elections. However, today I'm focusing on youth voter participation. Thank you and happy to be here.
Thank you for your expertise, Monica. We met when you were at FIU. You've been leading for many years. Miles Davis, thank you so much for being with us today. Introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. I'm elated to be participating with such an esteemed panel and esteemed organization this morning. My name is Miles Davis. I'm the Florida Director of Voting Rights at America Votes, where we lead collaborative efforts to advance policy and win elections in key states. America Votes coordinates with more than 400 national and partner organizations to create fairer, more representative democracy with the goal of increasing voter participation across the country. In my role, specifically more in Florida, this includes investments in voter education, vote by mail programs to defend our democracy, and building on the high levels of energy engagement, especially in communities of color with women and among young people.
Thank you so much for being with us. And Marisol Centeno, thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I am representing the League of Women Voters today. I am a past president of the League of Women Voters Miami-Dade and former first vice president of League of Women Voters Florida. The League of Women Voters is an 102-year-old organization, nonpartisan and nationwide, that started before women gave the right to vote. I am so happy to be here because it's so important to empower women to vote and get to the polls. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan and focusing on defending democracy and empowering voters. As we know, women, we accomplish so much when we gather, and it's so awesome and so happy to be here at this Impact Collaborative this morning. Thank you.
of our panelists in the same order to do in 3 minutes, tell us what are the issues? What do we need to know? And then in the subsequent section, it's what can we do? So right now, what are you seeing, Dr. Bustinza?
Wonderful. Yeah. So if you could move to the next slide, that'd be fantastic since I only have 3 minutes. Yeah. So recent trends in youth voting challenge the traditional belief that candidates don't need to focus on younger voters because they're perceived as unreliable voters. However, we're seeing headlines, we're seeing differences in how young people are voting. Next slide. The rate of voter turnout among young voters varies depending on the state and county. However, historically, this group has had lower voter turnout compared to other age groups. In 2020, 80% of registered voters, student voters, went out to vote with a significant improvement from 2016 voter turnout rate. And according to the NSOLV report released in 2021, white women had the highest voter turnout rate among race gender subgroups, with 73% of them voting. Multiracial women followed closely at a rate of 69%, while white men had a voter turnout rate of 68%. When we look at Black women and had a voter turnout rate of 66%, and women in general have consistently shown higher registration and voter turnout rates compared to men between 2012 and 2020. Next slide. So NSOLV is the largest study of college students voting in the US, and about 1,200 campuses participate. When we look at our local institutions in Miami-Dade, I'm just going to highlight on Florida International University and Miami-Dade College. When we look at students by age group, we actually see, since the 2016, 2018, 2020 election, we see a continuous increase by age on voter turnout. Next slide. So when we take a closer look regarding gender, we look at Florida International University is the one that's presented here. We see continuously across the board when we compare female-male, we do see the same results, which is a difference between male and female, and women lead the way. Next slide. Same thing at Miami-Dade College. If you compare differences in voter turnout there, you'll see differences. However, when we look at Miami-Dade College on its own, we once again see that women lead the way when turning out the vote. Now, taking this a step further, when we look at youth voter registration and turnout in 2022, we see that turnout within the age group of 18 to 24 was only 24.3%, and between the ages of 25 and 34, a 28%. So if we merge those two together, definitely a voting block here that we're starting to see. Next slide. So in particular, youth voter turnout in Miami-Dade in 2021 during the municipal elections, I really wanted to highlight this, particularly because we have the Big Four coming up later this year. And when we look at the vote share of the age group between 18 and 35, we see that in Hialeah, they only made up 6.94%, in Homestead, 10.06%, Miami Beach, 8.85%, and in Miami, 9.54%, demonstrating the need to get out the vote, particularly with young people. Next slide. So just very quickly, and I know that we've heard from the other panelists, there are various factors that can impact an individual's ability to participate in elections, but these can definitely be grouped into two different sections. One is individual factors, and there's also these legal and institutional factors. Some of these individual ones could be a person's age, income, race, ethnicities. Some of these are correlated with higher levels of voter turnout. The more educated you are, the higher likely you are to vote. Same thing with insufficient knowledge about upcoming elections and candidates, particularly for local elections. And in terms of legal, which I know that some of my colleagues will speak more about this later on, those legal and institutional factors such as voter registration obstacles. What do I need in order to register to vote? Deadlines, book closing dates in the state of Florida. You got to register to vote 29 days before an election. Many people don't know this. There's also eligibility requirements and challenges to requesting and returning a ballot. Next. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want everybody to know that that rich information will be available on our replay. And Libby, if you can put a link there to our Impact Collaborative page, about 24 hours from now, this full Impact Collaborative will be there, and we invite you to use it in its entirety, in short bits and pieces, with whatever orgs you have. There are a lot of institutes of higher learning here with us today. Please, we invite all of you to please bloom and grow with this Impact Collaborative. Today's the seed. Take it to your networks, please. And with that, Miles Davis, please take it away.
Thank you so much. And I think one of the key issues that can't be overlooked relating to women showing up at the polls is the recent bills that the governor and state legislature have passed over the last few years that one makes it more complicated for people and groups to register voters in their community, and that two requires voters to re-enroll and vote by mail. The state legislation reduced the duration of mail-in ballot requests from 4 years to 2, and also required election supervisors to cancel millions of requests late last year and start their rolls afresh. So we know that this means that voters who previously requested mail-in ballots before November 2022 will have to make new requests to vote by mail for elections in 23 and 24, and then again for elections in 25 and 26. And I know Representative Lopez mentioned the need to re-enroll earlier, and I don't think that we can stress that enough, seeing that millions of people had their standing request reset, and a lot of those people weren't aware that that change had happened. Recently in Senate Bill 7050, we saw reduced times that a voter has to request a vote by mail ballot. That used to be a little bit shorter. Now it's been extended to 12 days before an election, which takes away 2 full days from the current deadline. And as you all know, our schedules are busy, and one of the main reasons that people or voters in particular would request a vote by mail ballot is because their schedule is hectic. They're taking care of mom, they're taking the kids to school, they're going to school themselves. And that vote by mail ballot provides a crucial window for a voter to be able to make informed decisions about the future of not only their community, but in some cases, communities that are around them as well. I think it's also important to note that Senate Bill 7050 will also require voters to present an emergency affidavit if they want to request a vote by mail ballot during the early voting period, which was something that we've never seen before. Previously, the emergency affidavit was only necessary if the ballot was being picked up on election day. So obviously we would want to limit that, but to think that we're going to limit it now to the whole early voting period, which in some instances could be several weeks, we just think that that is something that women in particular, seeing as they're driving our turnout, need to be aware of. The bill also fails to address the needs of voters with disabilities who have a right to receive an accessible vote by mail ballot through electronic means. And on that last point, we're actually working really closely with our partner organizations to create an open line of communications with the Department of State, Division of Elections, while they go through this rulemaking process as it relates to Senate Bill 7050's implementation. And that accessibility factor is right there at the top of what we want to make sure gets addressed, so that women have the ability to level their mighty electoral power in these upcoming elections.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Miles. Marisol, what are you seeing?
So thank you so much for that. And I am so grateful for the panelists and everything that has been given. The League of Women Voters, we are a nonpartisan organization, and we've been registering voters for over 100 years at this point. And that's always been our bread and butter, to empower voters and defend democracy, because we know that women are over 52% of the population, and yet we don't have the same representation. So while it says the League of Women Voters, we also serve males, but under the current circumstances, last year, Senate bill, and specifically in Florida, Senate Bill 90 was implemented, which already restricted a lot of our regular daily routines, registering voters all over the county or all over the state. And now there's been greater imposition, which has hindered a lot of our effort. State Representative Vicky Lopez mentioned a couple of bills, and so did Miles. And Senate Bill 750 was just implemented in this year's legislation, which further restricts us. It changes the voter registration. We are what they call the third-party voter registration organizations, and it's limiting our days in which we can submit the registrations. They increase the fees should we not send them in time, and a couple of things that you can read on the slide. And because of this, we've had to change the way that we do business. So now you can see here that starting on July 1st, when the law was implemented, we're no longer going to be doing in-person voter registration with our clipboards and doing it and with paper. So instead of that, we are encouraging all our leagues to go ahead and sign up all the voters or future voters, sign them up electronically directly, so we don't receive the actual paper. So we are also encouraging our local leagues to actually just give them a self-stamp address envelope, so that way we don't grab it, because that's when we have the issue, and that's when the imposition comes to the league. This has hindered us a lot, and we're just having to go into a different way of registering voters. We know how important it is for women to register to vote and vote, because, like, as I said before, we're over 52% of the population. Monica's slides indicated how much more women vote than men. And we see that all these issues affect us directly. Women, we carry the load in the household. We are not only take care of ourselves, we take care of our children and significant others. We also take care of our parents, and we do so much in the community. We focus on healthcare, the housing, all of these economy and education are issues that are very important for women in these elections. And we know how important for women to actually vote on these issues, because we are directly affected and by the legislation that passes. If you could go to the next slide. This year, after Dobbs' decision, we have partnered with Floridians Protecting Freedom, because healthcare and abortion issues are very important to women. We are looking forward to have make our own decisions with our healthcare providers and our families as to what we want to do with our bodies. And this is going to be something that's really going to drive women to the polls, according to what's happened. And this slide indicates the drive, a citizen campaign to get this into the 2024 ballot. As we know, women in Florida, citizens have the right to put things in the ballot if you get the required number of signatures. And this is going to be, hopefully, everyone has signed this petition, and is to protect, this is the actual language, and this is to protect access to abortion and reproductive health and defend the right of bodily autonomy. The language, you can read it there, and is, so reproductive access and abortion has been hindered slightly in the state of Florida. And this is why this petition is on. We need 891,000 signatures throughout the state in order to get it onto the ballot. They need to be verified and certain, and there's the link that you can sign the petition. These are the issues that are going to be driving women to the polls. So it's really important to empower ourselves. We carry so much of the burden, so we should show that at the polls when we're electing officials to make decisions for us.
Thank you so much, Marisol. I will say that the Women's Fund is also supporting as part of our health and well-being pillar this right. So the Floridians Protecting Freedom link is there to sign the petition. Thank you, Libby, for posting it. Before we go to our next section, which is solutions and calls to action, 3 minutes each. Marisol, I'm going to ask you to look at the first question. Sarah Harold has already put one in. So after we go from this section, we will go to the Q&A. I'm going to punt it to you first. So please look, Sarah Harold has a question there. Dr. Bustinza, please, 3 minutes, calls to action. What can we do?
Awesome. Thank you. Well, for those of you that are not familiar with Engage Miami, we build civic power and leadership in South Florida. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. And while we heard about the barriers to voting, one way to increase youth voter participation, particularly amongst women or whoever it may be, is by investing in voter education programs in high schools, which would help educate young people on the importance of voting. Start early, right? It is also important to promote civic education in schools so that students understand how government works and their role in the process. We need to advocate for policies that make voting more accessible, as we heard from the other panelists. And, something as simple as same-day voter registration, which other states do have, can help increase voter turnout in general, not just amongst young people. We also, should focus on issue-centric mobilization, as Marisol already shared, which can help drive participation in elections. And of course, collaboration with local election officials, our supervisors of elections, is crucial to ensuring that polling places are accessible and that there are enough resources that are being distributed to accommodate to all kinds of voters. And of course, understanding voting trends, for anyone that wants to run for office, understand that, youth voting can turn out and determine the outcome of elections. Next slide. And just some concluding thoughts, ensuring the participation of young voters and women is of utmost importance for a prosperous and all-encompassing democracy. By providing civic education to youth, we make a crucial investment in our democratic system. Education at the epicenter of it all plays a huge role in shaping civic power and instilling a sense of community and involvement among young people. Furthermore, it can help tackle political disparities and representation.
Thank you so much. Miles, what can we do? What are your calls to action? Oh, we have you on mute, Miles. We want to hear you.
It's interesting. I always feel like I would get past that by this point, but the mute button never ceases to terrorize an individual at least once a week. But with that being said, I second everything that Monica said before me. I think looking ahead to this November and to elections in 2024, there are two important actions that voters must take. First, I think, of course, is vote by mail re-enrollment. Every voter who wants to continue voting by mail needs to renew their application. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Whether you're a super voter or whether you're voting for the first time, this applies to everybody and anybody. Requesting a vote by mail ballot, we know is easy and can be done in minutes. There are 4 ways that you can request your vote by mail ballot from your county supervisor of elections office. That's online, of course, over the phone, in writing, or in person. I'm gonna drop a link in the chat that provides a list for reference of all of our supervisor of elections, no matter what county you're in, so that you'll be able to have that information to reach out to them and form those connections. And I think it's important to note that we don't wait until the last minute. I know I mentioned with the new law, you'll have 12 days before to request your ballot, but we know that municipal elections are fast approaching in many parts of Miami-Dade, and we should be doing everything we can to be proactive and request these ballots as soon as possible, not only to reduce the strain on our supervisor of elections office who's working in overtime to make sure elections go off without a hitch, but also just to provide that peace of mind to yourself that you have options and that your voice and your power can be leveraged. Second, I think, is to make sure that we vote, especially down ballot. I know in November 24, all eyes are going to be focused on the top of the ticket with good reason. But we also know that the mayor of Miami-Dade County will be up for re-election as well. And we know that this nonpartisan office oversees a $10 billion plus budget that impacts every facet of daily life in Miami-Dade County. In addition, Miami-Dade hasn't had an elected supervisor of elections since 1957, when voters here adopted a home rule charter abolishing a few constitutional offices, including the tax collector. I think this bleeds right into what Monica was saying before in terms of our engagement with our supervisors, because we know that with them needing to run and them being on the ballot due to a constitutional amendment going into effect, that they're going to have to run not only on the ballot, but they're going to have to run in partisan elections. So this is going to give a unique opportunity and means that Miami-Dade County voters and women in particular are in a unique position to ask the candidates for these offices questions in a way that puts your priorities first and leverages women's electoral power, not only in Miami-Dade, but across the state.
Terrific. That's why we decided to do this Impact Collaborative now with our leadership pillar, not to wait until just before the elections. The time is now, right, Marisol? Take it away. What can we do?
Yes, definitely. And that's why I'm so grateful to be here. As Miles said, next year is going to be packed with things for voters in Miami-Dade County, not only the federal elections, but also locally. And we always say we need to vote local. Okay, every vote matters, every vote counts. We have a little slogan at the League of Women Voters that is your voice, your vote, your future. Okay, and this goes especially with younger voters, as Monica was saying. A lot of them are not getting out to vote, but I always say it's like the decisions that are made and the legislation that is put in place right now is going to affect you, younger voter. Okay, it's going to affect those older ones, but you too, because these laws are going to be in place for many, many years. And we're calling for action, and we're asking you to register to vote. The links are right there. And if you're not registered, you can change your address. You can update your signatures and on the website for the supervisor of elections. You can also and should request your vote by mail, just like Miles is saying, because all of that is gone. So we want to give a shout out to Supervisor of Elections, Christina White. They have done an amazing job sending out the new requests, sending out tweets and emails for everyone to request their vote by mail ballots. So if you should, so you can redo it. And then we also want you to know your local elected officials. As Miles said, once again, we're going to have Amendment 10 that was voted into practice in 2018. It changes everything in Miami-Dade County. Before, we only had elected property appraiser and clerk of courts. Now we're going to have a sheriff. We're going to have an elected supervisor of elections and a tax collector. And not only are those going to be elected positions instead of appointed by the mayor, they're also going to be partisan. So it's going to be a lot of information coming at the voters. We want them to go to vote411.org. The League of Women Voters is going to be hosting candidate forums and requesting that the candidates fill out a questionnaire so you, the voter, know where they stand for. And you should always vote your conscience and according to what these elected officials and candidates believe and that they represent you. So we want you to, the last 3 links there are the ones, the local elected officials in Miami-Dade County. You can put in your address and you can find out what district you belong to. The second one, you can see your state representative. And then the third one, you can see your state senators. This is so very important. The League of Women Voters, we focus on empowering voters, and part of that is providing education so people can know who are they voting for and who represents them. Thank you so much, and this has been amazing.
We're going to keep on going with Q&A. Don't go anywhere. Representative, State
you.
Representative Vicky Lopez, please join us for the Q&A. Marisol, I had said that the first question here from Sarah Harold, can we get the applications and envelopes for companies that are willing to run a registration drive? I think I'm going to volunteer League of Women Voters. There are many resources, Sarah, that have been posted since you posted your question. But one of the polls allows you to connect with anybody else who's been speaking here. And Camila Ustares, who leads these impact collaboratives in our team, is happy to connect everyone. So am I right, Marisol, that you could help individual organizations or companies who want to do a voter registration in their company?
Yes, we would love to. As I said, we have 100 years doing this, and the whole thing is to give voters the information they need to make informed decisions, to know their candidate, to know where they're supposed to vote. Just as Representative Lopez said, everything has changed. Redistricting took place after the census, and even though you might live in this side of the street, your neighbor might be voting at the local school versus at the library where you used to go to. So you need to put in your information so you can know where you vote. We love to be engaged with the community. I think through partnerships is how we can get the word out. And that's what's important for people to be knowledgeable about what's on their ballot.
Now, next question, and we're going to have all the panelists please hear. What resources are available to support women interested in running for office, especially first timers where running a campaign can be challenging? Who would like to take this question first?
I would love to take this question, Maria.
All yours.
So, there are so many resources. There's also a lot of people that are running what we call campaign schools. But I have to tell you that I'm going to challenge the Women's Fund because
I can't see you on the screen for some reason. I don't know if it's me, Vicky, but I think you need to go back on camera.
Oh, okay.
I
Hold
see
on.
a ceiling. There we go. Just to let us know.
Hold on. Oh, I think what's happened. There we go.
There you go. Now we see you again. Go ahead.
Thank you so
Not
much.
at all.
So there are many, I think, organizations that have been doing what I call campaign schools, but I traditionally like to sort of lean on My Women's Fund to provide maybe a collaborative on this, because as we do more and more encouraging women to run for office, I think one of the panels that I served on that I thought was most effective was getting women who had already run for office, those who had won, those who had lost, to really talk about the nuances of running, right? Because you can go to a campaign school and it can tell you, okay, you have to sign up and do this by this time, but you don't get a real flavor of what it really takes to run for office. I mean, I know my good friend Cindy Lerner's on here, and she posted on the chat that she ran and lost by 1% and is running again, but she's won other elections. And I think talking about our experiences would be even more helpful and much more valuable to women, because we're going to tell you the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think it's important that women of all ages know it, because we need you all to run for office. I also wanted to, Maria, just quickly say that we didn't touch upon justice-involved women and this voting. This to me has been very personal. It's been something that I've been working on. But if you're working with women who have unfortunately had a felony conviction or who've just been justice involved, there's been so much confusion. And as we saw in this last election, innocent people, in my opinion, got arrested to make a point, and they picked on people who should, the onus is on the government to ensure that if you get a voter registration card, that should be the first thing that tells us, okay, I'm good to vote. And so I feel like we have to really inform justice-involved women around what to do next, right? Which is make sure that before you register to vote, you've connected with either, the state elections office, say, listen, I need to know for sure, because guess what? We learned that they're putting the onus back on us, those who've been justice involved. And so I know that Miles will probably be looking at some of this, as he goes down the road, because this was a huge issue in this past election. And people who are justice involved but have the right to vote because they have completed their sentences, that to me is a critical population. We have millions of people who've been justice involved in our state, and many in our community, and they are now fearful about voting because of what happened. So we've got to get the facts out to everyone. And Miles, hopefully America Votes will help us with that a little bit at least. And certainly all of us here, like Marisol, I know is my big partner in crime here, with making sure that the disinformation that is out there for women that have been involved, and there's plenty of women who've been involved in the system, don't lose their right to vote because of the misinformation.
We will take on that challenge, Vicki, because we have a history. We actually did have a forum on the Impact Collaborative about a year and a half ago, I think, and a 2-year ago election cycle of female candidates, once again, nonpartisan,
Right.
but listening to those voices. So we take on that challenge and excited to do that again. And thank you very much for touching on justice involved, because that is also something the Women's Fund has carried very, very, very much about. Anybody else want to take on that question before we go on to the next one?
Yeah, sure. So 2 things, Vicki, thank you so much for bringing up the justice involved candidates and voters. After we passed Amendment 4, the League of Women Voters, we have continuing education credits to work with attorneys for voters to figure out if they are able to vote, because as she said, it's put on the voters. There's no system for a voter to go and find out from the state if they're able to vote. So people were registering and voting, and then they couldn't. So we are advocating for that. In reference to more women should definitely run for office. I myself, as a previous and future candidate, knows all the hindrance of this. And it would be, I did a couple of courses, as Vicki said, but none of them was local. So that would be great to have something like that. As I say, women, we carry so much burden. We are so in touch with the issues that are affecting us that we should have better representation. We should be able to voice our opinions and get out there. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's definitely worth it, because then we can enact laws that affect us, because we are carrying the burden. Who else better to know what's going on in my family if I'm the one taking care of them, right?
And there's research that shows that we usually take care of other people first, whether it's going to doctor's appointments for our families, looking at our savings, et cetera. In this case, vote your future. That's very true. Christina Costanzo has a terrific question here. I'm really interested in the answer. Has anyone heard concerns from newer Miami and Florida residents? There are many, and many of them are supporting your women's fund. Like, who cares about women and girls here? A lot of those new voters, I've met so many who are joining our ranks these months and this last couple of years. Many of the residents, one of the reasons they don't want to register to vote is that Florida makes the information public and easily searchable on the internet. The information is much more easily accessible information than in many other states. Has anybody else heard these concerns?
I haven't.
Let's take it. Yeah, go ahead.
I haven't heard those concerns, but it is absolutely true. If I go Google any one of you, your entire voter registration information, address, everything is online. But I haven't, I literally, and I'm in my district all the time. And I would say District 113, which is the urban area of Miami, has experienced the greatest influx of people from New York and from Chicago, LA. And I haven't heard that. I mean, I think the real trend is not registering for any party. And I think that is, it not only is it trending, it is increasing. When 40% of my voters, they will determine the race at this juncture, right? You got to get at least 50% of them. But here's the problem, and I'm so hell bent about this. In today's divided world that we live in the primaries, because it's a closed primary, we are faced with, in a general election when no party affiliated voters can finally vote, what we have is extreme candidates. And many of us are in the center. You're either center left, center right, center somewhere, right? But reasonably common sense people. Well, what happens to my NPA voters is that they are forced to take whatever candidate comes out of the primary. And usually it is now extreme candidates. And so, a lot of them are asking me, well, should I register for a party, vote in the primary, and then come back and be an NPA in the general? And I go, well, I mean, you can do anything you want to do because gratefully you can. And that's an option as well. But my sense is that we've got it's another topic for another discussion, obviously, with these closed and open primaries, but there's also a loophole moving here about write-in candidates, which I'm working on as well. But that's not a topic for today. However, these are some of the major challenges that is happening, especially in our community. That I don't think that they care, at least I haven't heard that. They care more that they can't participate fully in a primary process.
I'll just pin real quick. You would think that with that statistic, Vicky, that the parties would and the candidates would understand that people, they just want to vote. They just want a sensible candidate instead of putting off people, which is what's happened. A lot of people, at the League of Women Voters, we face in here a lot of voters that is just like, oh, I'm so done with these people. I'm so done with these parties. And then they don't go out to vote. We want to change that. We want you to vote in spite of that. And sometimes it's like choosing the lesser of two evils, right? But we need to get out and vote because they are the ones that represent us.
Very quickly, I would like to address some of the questions that were in the chat box regarding voter registration. Yeah, I really want to speak about this. So 7050, Senate Bill 7050, has changed the way third-party voter registration organizations conduct voter registration. At this moment, we're waiting for a new voter registration form to be released, which should be done by October 1st. It's currently in the administrative rulemaking. But those of you in the chat that are asking, how do I register to vote? Right now, you've got two options. Number one is online. Be mindful, please, that to register to vote online, you need both a Florida ID and the last four of your social. If you do not provide these, they will email you your form, and then you've got to send it out on your own. Now, those of you that want to conduct voter registration, like for your organization or whatever it may be, one approach that folks are taking is they're giving out forms with not a number, not associated to any organization. And then groups like Engage Miami are assisting folks with completing their form, whether it's online or in paper form. But we are not, Engage Miami is not collecting any forms at this moment until we get the new form from the state, which now, because of Senate Bill 7050, they're asking us to give folks a receipt that says, I'm Monica Bustinza, registered, Miles to vote. This is his party affiliation. This is his this is his that. So it's really making it challenging for groups like ours to do this kind of work, which is sad, because studies do show that, you know, minority groups are more likely to register to vote with a third-party voter registration than not. I happen to be one of those that registered to vote, not through the DMV, but actually through the League of Women Voters. But yeah, so if anyone has questions regarding VR, I'm happy to assist. And sorry, had to interject to clarify the VR stuff.
And because we're going to go 1 minute over, please keep on coming. What an incredible village square. The people who are with us today are so engaged. Amazing to see you all. Special shout out to Claudia Kitchens. Thank you for all that you've done to create this Women's Fund. Miles mentioned the county budget. We will have a very special town hall in partnership with many, many organizations. All of you who are here today, please join us. We're doing the production. Share with your networks, give us your logos. Please join us in partnership, leveraging knowledge and resources and access to leadership. We will host on Thursday, August 24th in the evening. It looks like 6 p.m. a town hall with Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, focused very specifically on her proposed budget that will go to the county commissioners, who will decide all of those funds that Miles mentioned before that get spent in our community. How are they focused on women and girls, and how are they focused on families, right? Very, very important. We can have hundreds and hundreds of us. United Way, Mujer, all of you who are here today, please join us. Send us your logos. Camila is reaching out to you. And then join us again for our next Impact Collaborative, the first Thursday of every month. Next focus will be on health and well-being. Amazing. It's amazing to be in community with you all. Thank you. And see the replay will be available. And look at our dashboard too. All that data is there. Panelists, you're amazing, amazing, amazing.
Thank you, Maria, for having us. This was really very informative. And thank you to the panelists. I'm so grateful for the work you're doing, and keep it up, because we need every one of you doing what you are focused on doing this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure. My dancing partner, Maria. Vicky, actually, this is great work and amazing. The women and girls in the county need it so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Similar to you all, I'm just very grateful to be a part, and I'm super looking forward to collaborating in the future, especially with justice involved women. Representative Lopez, I think there's lots of room for growth on that. And Dr. Bustinza, the rulemaking process through 7050 is something that I'm highly tuned into, and I will actually be at the hearing on August 22nd in Tallahassee. So if you all have any questions on that process, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miles.
Thank you all, and keep in touch. We are the future too, you know?
Yes, you are, Monica. Yes, you are. You keep this up.
Definitely are. Like I said, it's like
I don't think I'm as courageous as you other women that run for office. However, I amplify your work.
But as I said, the laws that go into effect now are going to affect all of your younger generations for sure. So that's why this is awesome that we can get you all involved and get out to vote and be informed.
Yeah, and thank you to the Women's Fund for giving us a space to speak.
Strong. This is all your women's funds. We mean it. It's 100% yours, created by you all and empowered over these 3 decades and beyond. You know, I'm on screen today, but I'm a blip on this screen. It will be all of us together over the years. It's amazing. And Camila, you're off camera, and Natasha, and oh gosh, Vero's there, our incredible board. There you are, Nikki. Thanks, team. You're the best.
Thank you.
All right.
See you all. Bye.
Great empowered day, everybody.